biz. So here's the biz.
All right. What's up, y'all? This is Jay Graham for What's the Biz 559, and I'm here with a very special guest.
Oh man, it's very special.
Yes, very special guest. This is Bishop Hooks. Now, this is a special interview for myself because there is very few people that I look up to, and there's very few men that I hold special in my heart. And you've been there since the beginning, and this is one of those guys, man. And there's so much I could say in that, but I'm gonna keep it short with that part right there. You know what I mean? But this is Bishop Robert Hooks. He is the bishop at Restoration in Visalia, California. Also, he is the owner of Wings of Silver Studio in Visalia, California. And we're just blessed that you're here.
Oh man, I'm glad to be here with you. I don't even have the words, from birth to now. Of course, your mom and your dad and the relationship has just been, in my opinion, something that only God could have done, right? So it's your family in my heart, my thoughts, every fiber of my being tells me who you are, I'm just honored to be here. The place is amazing. You've done a great job, man. You did a great job.
Yes.
But they were telling me about what you did. Robert told me, then they came and told me about, because my traveling, do a lot of traveling. But then to walk in, I've always been proud of you, but then to walk in here and see everything that's done, I'm going like, OMG, man. Man, that it's so crazy to see you doing what you're doing. And of course, Amanda, and it just blesses me a lot to just see what you're doing, man. It blesses me.
Well, I learn from the best.
Oh, man. I don't know about that, but I'm glad to be in your life, that's for sure.
Man, I'm glad you're in my life.
You're my nephew, man.
Definitely. We're going to, there's a lot of things I know about, but we're going to get more in depth with Robert Hooks.
Yes, sir, sure.
Yes, sir. For the people who don't know. Well, I doubt there's anybody that doesn't know you out here, but just for those small few amount of people that don't know. Okay. So one of the things, I don't think I know too much of this story either. Were you born in the Central Valley?
I was born in San Bernardino. I was born in San Bernardino Hospital off of Waterman in 1958. I was born there, and I was raised, of course, in that area. Well, I was born in San Bernardino, went to Los Angeles. My folks moved to Los Angeles, and I'll never forget you can't go to Los Angeles without having some memories, right?
Right.
And so I was there until I was 5 years old or so, when Sam Cooke was killed and all of that. And I was there during that time. My dad took me to where he was actually killed. My father and him were friends. And so he took me to where he was actually killed. And I remember those moments. But then we always headed back to San Bernardino. Born in San Bernardino, my dad came from Mississippi area. And it was quite a life being young and being born down south, beautiful mountains, gorgeous mountains. And then the Lord dealt with me to come up here in this area. So I've been here for 40, how old are you?
I am 42,
so,
42, I think.
Well,
42.
That's about how long I've been here, 42 years.
Wow.
So you were born,
right.
So I've been here all this time. I love the valley.
Right.
I love it. I don't like, back then it was the fog. I didn't like the fog.
Yeah.
But
I remember the fog.
You remember the fog, man?
Yeah.
It was crazy. It was
young.
crazy, man.
Yeah.
The fog was crazy. I remember that. But you were born here. Were you born here?
I was born in Visalia.
You were born in Visalia. You were born? I thought you were born in Tulare, but you were born in Visalia. Okay. Yeah. Robert was born in Tulare.
Yeah.
And of course, y'all were like brothers, cousins, the whole nine.
Still are. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So what? So you said, was it the family that moved out here, or just yourself?
Just myself. My dad. We, just to identify who he was. My father in the gospel. There was a church in Bloomington, California, that he was a pastor of. He was pastoring in Fresno, and then he transitioned to Bloomington. He put someone else there. Vester East took that ministry there in Fresno. And he moved to Bloomington, California.
Right.
So at 18 years old, I was already 7, but at 18 years old, I moved from San Bernardino area or Rialto, from there to Fresno, and then I've been here ever since.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite a change, but I loved Tulare. I fell in love with Tulare when I was 16 in a revival that my dad had in a meeting, and it was a lot of miracles. Met people that were not real churchy. They were religious, but they were not real churchy. You know, they went on this side of churchyism, if I could say it like that, churchism. But they were very religious, and God really touched them. They saw miracles and saw things, and it just took them into a whole different area. So I just fell in love with them, man. I totally fell. I actually came to this area with them in mind. You know, to help my dad, of course, the church in Fresno, but also with them in mind because I fell in love with the people here in Tulare. I still love the people here in Tulare.
Wow.
You know, they didn't start a church here, but I still love the folks here.
Right. That's amazing. Yeah. And what all the camp meetings and stuff, I remember like my dad would tell me about and you would tell me about. Yeah. Is that around the same time?
Yeah, it's around the same time. Coming out of the 60s, Brother Allen, he passed 70 in 1970. I think it was either June, June or April, somewhere around there. And so there was a lot of pastors that was in that particular expression of preaching and what have you, that, you know, what do you do when someone dies that has that kind of legacy and that kind of influence? And so moving from the 60s to the 70s.
Wait, who was A. Allen equivalent to like nowadays, you would say?
I don't know anybody.
Because I know the stories, but a lot of people don't know.
I don't.
So just take your biggest pastor, T.D. Jakes. I can't even think of no other big time people, but he was 3 times that.
Yeah, well, the way that so his compassion, I'm not saying that none of them have compassion. I love Bishop. I love all of the ministers that God has on the forefront. I don't despise any of that at all. But what made Brother Allen different is how God used him to cut through stuff, the bigotry, the systemic racism, and the different things that was going on. His life was threatened constantly because he had a heart for every color and every people, and then the miracles. There's no way you can't not deny the miracle. I mean, it was impossible. You know, I mean, you're looking at blind people. You're looking at bus loads of people or van loads of people that were deaf and mute, couldn't hear, couldn't talk.
Wow.
And you're watching God heal every single one of them. And so I was a kid. I was young, and my grandma, you would go to the meetings, or he would come to San Bernardino, come to some of the, like the Civic Center and some of the different places, bring his tent there on the fairgrounds. And she would say, you can never get that out of your mind. So to compare that kind of move that was constant, you can rely on it every single service. Something supernatural is going to happen every service. They weren't trying to make it happen. They weren't trying to copy yesterday's service. There was no stamp of something that you just come in a formula. They just came from all over the world, and it was very, very powerful. So to find someone today, or to even think of someone that flowed like that, and he was despised. He wasn't a perfect man, but you don't have to be. There's some people that think you have to be just perfect in all your ways, but God saw him, and God loved him, and God would manifest himself in many, many ways that we don't see that kind of manifestation in the States like we did back then. Now, if you go to other countries, it's different, but in the state with our ideologies and sophistication, we just think different. When you're amongst people that don't have as much as we have, they rely on God. They need a miracle. They're not trying to talk themselves out of the position of needing God. And so our country has changed quite a bit. It's changed quite a bit. But God is still God, and he's doing great things. And with these men, they're doing amazing things, and particularly in volume, in the seas of people and opportunity to touch them in many ways. It's been really powerful. But I miss hearing them preach, and I listened to your dad give me stories and talk to me about it because I was very young.
Right.
I'm not saying your dad wouldn't. I just want you to know. He's a tall man. I don't want to be saying nothing about him. But it was in that context that we were able to meet so many different preachers from that camp
Right.
that carried different anointings, and along with those anointings, there was challenges too.
Yeah.
A lot of things happened during that time because they were transitioning. They didn't know what to do. I mean, Brother Martin, Gene Martin, of
Yes,
course, he sang the paint off the walls. I seen him sing people out of wheelchairs.
Wow.
Like they were paralyzed, and watched him sing, and the anointing would hit people. And I know that sounds strange, but they would be healed, and there was no way of denying that. So it was a great time.
Right.
Great time.
Yeah. I just remember hearing all the stories, man. I love it. I love hearing the stories, the different things that y'all been through, the things that y'all seen. It's amazing, man. And a lot of people don't get that side of the story, or that side of the picture for things. But I'm blessed to have that, and always here. We'll stay up late just talking about.
Man. You know us.
And talking about from music to politics to the gospel, all those things. And I love. Don't ever take it for granted. I always keep those stories in my heart. Although, because you tell me some stories, and I always piece everything together. Because it's like, oh yeah, he said, oh yeah, that falls in line with this. Oh, that's crazy. So. Yes, it's really cool.
A lot of history.
Yes, sir.
And a lot of history. And you were raised in church all your life, so you have a wealth of sight that often, you run into people that have no idea, they have no idea. What I love about you being the PK is that you're healed through all of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because PKs see a lot, and they deal with a lot. Oftentimes the parents don't have a clue of what they're having to go through, at seasons in their life. So to see what you're doing and see what God is doing through you is quite amazing. It's amazing right here, right now. I'm in your studio, man. This is crazy,
Right.
So yeah, man. But yeah, we've had some great moments that we're not rushing to get back to that or trying to repeat that. But the hunger for the move of God is in your dad. Of course, that's why he's in New Mexico, still in tent revivals,
right.
Which is crazy. He's in the tent revival now, I think, right?
Yeah, and they just got done. Yeah,
they just got done. And he was in Gallup, right?
Yeah.
Who were the guests that came? Do you remember?
A whole roster.
He had a lot of them, huh?
Yeah, a whole roster of people. I don't know how he does it, but he does it every year.
Every year, man. It's crazy. It's crazy.
And shout out to everybody that came. You guys are special because you hold him down. That's for sure. That's for sure, man.
He's a great man.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
As with your mom, she's not just a great cook; she's a great mom.
Right.
She's a great sister.
Yes, sir.
So I love her dearly and love them dearly, man.
Do you think that there's something I noticed with like different generations, and one thing about like you, my dad, that generation of men were just a little different, right? And I'm learning every day a little bit more as I become older in age, become more of a man. And it's like there's certain things, like one thing I could point out is longevity. When you guys do something, ever since my memory kicked in, you were always pastoring. I don't know you of anything else. My dad, same thing, of course. Pastor Hutchison, same thing, of course. Like, and a lot of people I meet in my life, outside of you guys, they've changed to a lot of different things through the years. I'm saying through my 40 years of living or whatever. It's like they were this and then they were this, and understandably so, because life is hard. You have to change, you have to adjust and stuff like that. But what were those hard times? Because I know you mentioned some things to me when you were coming up in the ministry. That a lot of people don't know about. Was it always easy, or were there just like when I say hard, were there like real struggle, like as in I ain't got no place to stay, I'm this, I'm that, or whatever, in your come up of being a pastor? Because a lot of people think they see you now like, oh yeah, man, they got it good and this and that, and oh man, it must be nice being a pastor. I've heard this multiple times when people, with different pastors and stuff, and they think it's so easy, or it's a hustle, or it's like, man, it's not a hustle, man. You got to be called. You got to have something special to be able to do that, And is there anything that you could share with that?
Well, okay, so my experience when the Lord saved me at 14, my entire view of life changes. Everything changes. Now my mom and my dad, my biological mom, my biological father was divorced from my mom when I was like 2 years old. So my mom, or well, one or whatever it was, and then my mom remarried when I was about 3. And married a man by the name of Willie Hooks, who loved me enough to give me his name. And a great man. He's a great musician. He taught me how to play guitar. He was just a great man, a great father. And so, but that life had a great impact on me because he was a man's man. Like if there was something going on, he was that father that would go to your games. If something was going on anywhere, we lived in Rialto, which was a great city to live in. But then God saved me. So even before that, I was at 9 years old. My dad was doing rehearsal downstairs in the den area. He had a band called the Interns. I think that was the name. Forgive me, I can't remember. But he had this band, and they were having rehearsal. And when he got up and left to go upstairs in the kitchen area to get something to eat and snack on, and I kept staring at his guitar. He had an old Jaguar, 1964 Jaguar, and I kept staring at that guitar.
You wasn't supposed to touch it?
I wasn't supposed to touch it. So one of the members, the drummer, his name was Ethan. He looked at me and said, "Man, why are you looking at the guitar like that? Like you hungry? What you looking at the guitar like that?" He said, "Do you play?" I said, "Yes, sir." "You don't play guitar?" I said, "Yeah, I do play." He said, "Can you really play?" I said, "Yes, sir." And while the kids was watching TV, I would be in rehearsal with my dad watching everything he did, every move he made, and his faces, because you play the blues, you got to make that face.
Yeah.
They're feeling it. So I was watching all these emotion with all these different musicians, and I said, "Well, pick up the guitar and play it." I said, "That's my daddy's guitar. I ain't getting no whooping. No, I ain't getting no whooping. Not me." They said, "No, he won't whip you. I promise you. I'll just let him know that we asked you to do it." And so they talked me into it, and I picked up the guitar. And he said, "What song you want to play?" I said, "I want to play the song Thrill Is Gone by B.B. King." They said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, Thrill Is Gone." I said, "What key?" I said, "Key of C." Because I'm looking at my dad,
Yeah.
And so I counted it off. 1, 2, 3, and hit the first 3 notes. And when I hit the first 3 notes, I'm a little kid. They looked at my eyes was closed first, and when I hit the notes, I could get all that ugly blues look, I did all that, and they stopped playing. Well, my eyes was closed, and I just heard the sticks dropped, and I thought, "Oh my, I'm gonna get a beating today." I thought my dad came in and saw me, and I was ready to cry right there. And what happened was they ran upstairs. One of them ran upstairs and got my dad, "Willie, come down here, just come down here." So when he came downstairs, of course, they're not playing, and my eyes is like this. And I see him. He thinks something is wrong because he's in karate, so he's coming down. What? And he sees me. And he sees me with his guitar strapped around him, and it's up like this. And he just looked. He wasn't disgusted or angry. He said, "Willie, you got to hear this. You ain't going to believe this. You got to hear it." And I looked at him, and I was scared. I was ready to cry. And he said, "Son, it's all right. Play. It's all right. Are you comfortable?" I said, "Yes." And so they did it again. I counted out 1, 2, 3, and hit those 3 notes. But I continued to do the song, and my dad started crying. He could not believe that I can play guitar like him.
So hold on, man. You messing me up right now. So that's never touching the guitar, just from watching?
I played guitar. He bought me an old, it wasn't an old guitar. He bought me a guitar. It was a acoustic guitar, and he taught me 3 chords on that guitar. But he never taught me anything else after that. He taught me 3 chords. All the rest, I was so in love with my dad. I so loved him. Everything he did mattered. They have a father that loves you like that. And that's why I get so close to people, is because he's one of the ones that love me so deeply. And and so he just... He didn't give me any other lessons other than those 3 chords. It was a C, it was a G, and it was an F. Oh, and they did the D chord. Those are the only chords. But to play the blues, he never taught me fingering for the blues at all.
Right.
That was just watching them. watching him, and he just wept. And I played the whole song, and he couldn't keep he just couldn't keep his tears in. He just wept, and he just said, "What else do you do?" I said, "I dance and I sing." He said, "You dance and you sing?" I said, "Yes." And he grabbed his guitar and said, "What song do you sing?" I said, "I Feel Good" by James Brown. And man, I did that song, and that was it. From that day on, I traveled with my dad, toured with my dad. The next day, they had a gig. The next day, that was on a Thursday. The next day, they had a gig. He took me to the gig, blew it out. And just doors started opening up real crazy. So from 9 years old to 13 years old, we were being known all over the country pretty much, doing all kind of these crazy gigs. And then God saved me at 14.
Wow.
And so I lost all desire because up to that point, there was a contract that we were supposed to do, the guy that was booking for Bill Cosby. And so we had this contract to do in Hawaii. But when I got saved, I just had no desire to be big and raise money and do all this I lost all desire to do any of that. Right. Everything that was so glamorized to me, all of a sudden I had nothing. And then I was a great dancer too. I'm not just saying it, but I was a great dancer. Yeah. I was a really, really good dancer. Won all my dance contests. I was just like way, way, way good at dancing. Wasn't that great as a singer, but I was a good at a performer.
Yeah.
And but it was a lot of fun, and I remember those days. I remember feeling his arms around me after I did a show.
Wow.
And how he would hug me and how he would embrace me. And he just on stage, it was like father and son. That's crazy, isn't it?
That is, man. Was he disappointed when you got saved and you decided to go a different route?
It hurt him deeply. Actually, my mom was sick during that time. It was sent home to pass. The doctors couldn't do anything for her. And so, all of that combined together, and it was just heavy on him. And so our togetherness and what we did was a guaranteed paycheck. That was great, but I lost all desire, man. I mean, nephew, I just did not have any desire to be on the stage, the lights. When I would go places, they would have bodyguards and, that whole thing. I met, of course, Little Richard and Red Fox and Bubba and all of them, just in that whole, just shuffling through all of that.
Right.
And it was right at 14 when all of that started happening. So I had a lot of folks that was, they were a real strength to me to do something really large.
Right.
And as a father and son team, and I mean, we would work together, the way we played guitar together, the way we moved, because my dad was not a great dancer, but he knew how to perform. Like when it came to the blues, and then my uncle Marshall, who was off the chart player, and so he was more of a rock guitar player, like a Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
And so my dad, we would do shows where all three of us would be together, and I would sit on the chair, and I had two strings I would play. Then my dad would play two other strings, and then my uncle would play two other strings. And we knew the chord progressions for the song, and so it would just wow the crowd. It was crazy. It was amazing. So when my dad lost that, he suffered inwardly a lot, because it was at 14 or so that 13, 14 is when they started going through marital problems. And but I loved that man. I love him. He died many years ago, but he's in my heart. He was so powerful, man. Just powerful man. So I appreciated God keeping me during those years, because there was a few of those years that was crazy, because I really didn't know how to fight. Until I got probably about 12, 13 years old. And by then, my whole head was real violent. Right. So it was like, you're not going to hurt me. I'll make sure of that. And I don't care what extreme I have to go to, you're not going to ever hurt me. So I shifted because I remember 2 fights. I didn't win those fights. I remember, actually, there was a girl, her name was Thea White. And I was so small, but my mouth was big, but I was small, and I didn't like fighting because it would it's going to affect my playing guitar. I didn't want to hurt my hands or anything. So there's a lot of things I was scared. I didn't like playing baseball until later on in years, because I'm thinking the ball's going to hit my fingers, going to break my fingers. I won't be able to play guitar. Man, I was protecting my hands, But then I started learning violence from a different perspective, and how to do that, how to sneak, how to do things that I don't even want to talk about. I'm ashamed to talk about. But it was very early on.
Right.
And the Lord was very kind, though. He was very kind to me. I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
He was very, very kind to me to help me identify, that's not the way to live. But it was only after. Actually, this is a horrible story, but I was going to kill a guy at 14 years old, and I had planted the gun away from the junior high school. I had planted a gun, and it was in an old house where at that time, you would do the water, you would pick up the cement, or they had this little slab of cement that they would pick up, and they would be able to look at the meter and on and on. And so I put it in a plastic bag, and I hated this guy. I hated him. And so my thoughts was, of course, after school, I get to that place. I had already mapped it out, where to run, what house to get in the backyard, and on and on. You're a kid, you don't know what you're doing, but in your head you have this crazy mapping. And I was on my way to see my grandmother. I love my grandmother. I was on my way to see my grandmother on a Sunday morning, and Sister Goins picked me up and picked up my brother, and her sons was in the car. Mark was in the car, I believe, and Kenny. And we're on our way. It's a station wagon. Y'all don't know about a station wagon. It was a station wagon. And we were on our way to her house. We were on our way to church. And while we were on our way to church, she was driving the car and looked in the rearview mirror, because now I'm going to do this on Monday. This is on Sunday. My plans is to do it on Monday. I think only one of my cousins knew about it. And so the setup, because my auntie and them lived not too far from the school, so I can easily do what I'm going to do, jump a fence, get to her house, and it looks like it's free. That's the kind of way the enemy plays with your mind.
Yeah.
But I hated this guy. I hated him. And so she looked at me in the rearview mirror and said, Robert, and I looked up and said, yes, ma'am. She said, don't you do what you're going to do tomorrow.
Wow.
I said, that's ugly. Don't you kill that boy. It's
Wow.
man. Listen, you see how light I am now. I'm scared all the black out, man. I said, don't you do that? And I just looked at her, and I'm going like, I went to say what, but I knew in her eyes she knew something.
Wow.
And I knew no one knew that but God. And I told my cousin this actually after the fact, and I just started shaking in the back seat, or in the one seat, but in the station wagons they had two seats. So I would start shaking between my cousin and my friend, I think it was Kenny, and I was going like, well, yes, ma'am. She said, God don't like ugly. Said, don't you kill that boy like that. I never forgot that. So that stuck with me. So it's like God was using things to break me down the way I thought of Him,
Right.
and on, and ended up in service on Waterman. It was called Holy Deliverance Church of God in Christ back in the day. And I was 14 years old, and God saved me on a Wednesday night, and it changed my whole life. Everything about me changed. Everything. All the hate, and we were raised in a horrible family. We had a great family, lived in a wonderful house. We were blessed. I mean, God blessed us. A very large home. We were living in the whole middle-class dream. It was like we didn't really want for anything. God, He really blessed us, But there was something going on that was deeper than I can reach in and deal with.
Yeah.
And so sometime, you look back over your life and you go like, man, how did I get where I am right now?
Right.
That's why I refuse to believe the hype that I hear today about who God is and who He's not. He's very real. And so when the Lord saved me, I just started going to church, man. Listen, you could not offend me. A lot of people today get offended over anything. Say, boo, wait a minute, you said boo in the wrong key. Every little thing gets to them, right?
Yeah.
And so I realized that people need to be healed from those emotions. They need to be healed. But I was blessed with a grace to where you can discourage me. You can offend me. You can discourage me. You can, because I'm walking through KKK area to get to church.
Right,
I'm walking the church.
Yeah.
Every day we had church. Deliverance churches, they had church every day. So I ain't got to tell you, son. I ain't got to tell you. So every day we're having church. So I'm walking the church at that time, from San Bernardino, sometimes Riverside, to Bloomington all the way, and it was miles. But I would hear them, oh man, they'd be trying to sick a dog on me, call me the N-word, man, sound like a motorcycle. I mean, it was just, man, they was like, they were hating on me.
Right,
but
right.
I would walk by there just praying, very tender heart. That spirit of murder was out of my life. And I would walk by there, daily, as often as I could take that. If there was a shortcut I would take, but I had to go through the freeway on the 10. I'd have to walk the freeway, and that wasn't safe. But I would take the long route because it was safer than the short route. And it was pretty intense. But I never felt like hurt my feelings. You couldn't hurt my feelings. Like
Yeah.
God, he took that out. And I realized now with TL, just talking about things, we have a thing that we're doing twice a month called TTL, Tough Tender Love.
Yeah.
So people can be healed. And I realized I really understood, looking just at the notes and stuff that God gave to me, I believe, to share how you can be healed of things, that I don't even recall ever using the word that somebody offended me. It's difficult to say, somebody making a joke about you, you don't even know it. I don't even bother you. Say, and somebody else gets offended about it, right? They go
Right.
like, "Man, you hear what they said about you?"
Right,
no,
right,
no,
right.
man, I didn't. Man, did they say that really? And it doesn't even bother you. And that was the kind of grace that was on me, that take me from that murderous, burn your house down, do crazy stuff, to because I had to make a point. I remember going in the house, and this guy kept messing with my sister. And I remember climbing in his house. He was asleep. It was 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, 1:30 in the morning. I climbed through his window at 13 years old and put a gun to his face and said to him, "If you ever touch my sister again," I'm a kid. "If you ever touch my sister again, I'm going to kill you, your mom, your dad. If you ever talk to her again, if you ever disrespect her again." Now, I'm tiny, but I have to make these moves that I thought was going to stop all the making fun and all this kind of craziness. So I knew that there was something wrong with me. I just didn't know what it was.
Right.
You know what I mean? Something had agitated me and did something. Even my teachers did not believe that I would ever have a normal life.
Wow.
They believed that I would be in prison by the time I was 16 years old or dead.
Wow.
That's what they believed. I went to my 8th grade teacher. And walked into his class after I was an adult. I was about 19, 20 years old. Walked into his class. I had a suit on. I'd been evangelizing and walked in. I just wanted to surprise him. And when I walked in, he looked again, and he said, Robert Hooks?" I said, "Yes." His name was Ruiz. He worked at Kolb Junior High in Rialto. And he looked at me, and he just looked at me up and down. He says, What? He said, "I didn't even know you were living."
Wow.
I said, "Man, the Lord saved me." And he just started weeping. He just wept in front of his whole class.
Wow.
And after he hugged me and held me for quite a while, and he looked at me and he kissed me all over my face, "I can't believe you're here." And he had such fear that I would not survive. So when God saved me, I was so grateful that God took that stuff out of my heart. He healed me. I still, to this day, I can't go to the root of saying, well, it was this that did it, that did it. I was mean because of this. I hated. I can't go to. I don't know all that.
Right. Dang.
I just know I was healed. I know I was jacked up.
Yeah.
I couldn't blame it on white people didn't like black people.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have that in our family.
Right.
We didn't believe in that craziness, and so I couldn't use that as a reason. Although there was a few times I was chased home. Called special names, but I didn't have hate for that. You know what I mean? I didn't. That's not where it came from. It was something deeper.
Right.
I'm grateful that God saved me, and then gave me something to do. Like He called me into a life to share the greatest message in the world.
And it's almost like how you said you couldn't relate it to nothing in the past. But if it was an attack, knowing who you were going to be.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
It's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like, because I didn't know nothing about that. And that's what it feels like from what you're saying.
Yeah, you know, the other thing too, and one of the reasons that I'm doing this, and I've got to come back and talk about this if you'll give me opportunity.
Yes, we definitely want to.
The other thing was healing, people really being healed. I don't mean sedated, because there are people that don't know how to rest correctly. They just want to be sedated. Give me something to knock me out. And there's a big difference between being sedated and actually healed and actually resting. There's a difference when your body is asleep, but your mind has no rest. And I remember there was times, I never was in drugs. I mean, there was a few times that I took drugs to somebody, like, weed or something like that. And there was a method that they would give me. I'm just a kid, so I can just ride anywhere and then get to where it is, and they'd take it out of the handlebars on my bike. So I was young, 13 years old. But I don't know what it's like to get high, be on cocaine. I don't know any of that stuff. But I do know what it's like to be high on hate.
Yeah.
That I know what it's like to be.
Yeah.
And when God delivered me from that and taught me to love people, man. I'm not known to be a great preacher. That's not what I'm known for. I'm known, if anything, to simply love people. I don't care where you're from.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. I don't care what you've done. I don't care what color you are. I don't care if you've been divorced. I don't care what lifestyle you're in. I feel obligated not by my past, but by my future to love people.
Yeah.
God has been that good to me.
Wow.
So that's one of my concerns, even with the TTL, is to teach them how to heal of these different offenses and issues that they're going through, because, water runs beautiful going downstream. The least resistance can clog things up in your heart. So for God to deal with our hearts so that this can flow from us, it shouldn't be that difficult. It shouldn't be that difficult, but it is, because we're human. Yeah. And the way we filter stuff is very real. And I've seen people live in the same house and hate each other.
Yeah.
Because divorce never starts in the courtroom, it starts at the house. And so you have to make the effort to be in love, because you have to qualify that person. Then you have to make the effort to stay in love. And when offense creeps in, you can live in the same house up under the spell and vexation of offense. Sleeping right next to somebody that you love, but you can never even show that. And there's nothing worse than that kind of relationship where you love someone and you feel so completely oppressed and vexed by something that you can't even give the love that you have for them freely to them. And you blame it on them, but the reality is the problem is in you.
Yeah.
So you got to get healed. You have to know what it means. You go to the gym, you're preparing for something. You're not just trying to get muscles for the moment.
Right.
You're preparing. You want good health. And so people being healed is a part of their health.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the main messages of TTL.
So what is TTL? I hear you saying that. What is that?
It's a tough, tender love. It's teaching people how to accept the fact, because sometimes you can love somebody that don't love you back and you feel stupid, stepped on, you feel abused, and on and on. And you have to understand that love that God gave me, we need to define love first. What is it? And then what it isn't. How do you love? How does love work for your benefit? We were created to love. We were created with intimacy. He breathed into our nostrils the breath of God. This is personal from God, that he loved us so much. He didn't just say, get up and live. He said, no, I love you so much, you get my breath. I'm breathing into you. And so you see an act of intimacy between God and man that is unseen in any other creature. And the mere fact that he made us in his image, so we need to look to him to identify what love is. Because, there's a lot of time, I love my shoes, love my dog, love my cat, I love my girl, it's on my nails, I love my nail, girl, we go to love, don't you love that color? I mean, we got a lot of stuff we use love, at least the word of love. And so teaching them first how to identify what love is. Not that we don't know it, but we're studying it from someone that is a master of love. He so loved the world that he gave. Yeah, we're talking about his love. Our love is flipping and flighty, and it can get frustrated over anything, And so teaching them how to have this tough, tender love. Stay tender, but make sure your love is tough enough to get through stuff. Stop having breakdowns because somebody don't like your dress or talking about your hair. Listen, you know, I've known you all your life, so you saw me when I had my fro on.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a fro. I
Well,
would call it a...
cherry curl, whatever it was. Yeah,
I didn't want to bring it up.
Yeah,
Since you bringing it up, what possessed? No, I'm playing.
Amanda, come over and get me out of trouble, girl. But back in the day, you know, but my sight and view of myself changes outwardly. You know, I don't have the juice no more. You know, but all of those days, you know, I mean, you know, you've known me in my strength, yes. You know, but then you have to love the process. Some people can only care for when they arrive something. I'll be so glad when I get, but you need to learn how to love the journey, because mm-hmm. if you don't love the journey, you won't appreciate the destiny. Mm-hmm. And part of the journey, if not all of your journey, is your destiny to take you somewhere to where that God can express his love through you. Yeah. And that's the love for you, which you need to be able to identify that. So when I start dealing with people that are in church that are not healed, just to give you just a small definition of healing, to make free from injury or disease, and to make sound or whole, that God takes us into his care, and he loves us so much. He said, I don't want to keep you. I don't want you to stay like that. And God sets people around you to help you identify. Either you don't know you're loved, you're not loving with the love you're loved with, and unfortunately, some don't want to be loved. You know, there's people that don't want to be healed. That's strange to hear.
No, I believe
They're so in love with their pain that it becomes pride. So the distress becomes something that holds them as a prisoner. They become a slave to all of the stuff, and they're proud, and I went through this and blah, blah, and they live right there in those trenches. And everybody that tried to rescue them become an enemy to them.
Wow.
They don't know what to do with the good.
And you know, you saying that, there was a song that we used to listen to a lot by Tupac called Trading War Stories.
Yeah, man.
And it was like a cool thing. I get to tell you about what I went through, and you get to tell, you know.
You know, I know who Tupac is, right?
Of course.
You know, I've been in church all my life, you know. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he was in church no, I'm really. Yeah, he was quite a brainiac, actually, a tremendous talent. But when you start dealing with this kind of this love that has it has a surface, you know, it looks like something that it's not, and it has no strength to get there. You can always tell how strong love is. It's like a tea bag. You don't know how strong it is until you put it in hot water. The acid test of love, from a biblical perspective, means that I can never ever walk away from you.
Oh, wow.
That's the acid test. If you can frustrate me and stop me from loving you, then you can stop me from being me.
You're right.
So loving people in those moments, and it doesn't mean that you have to welcome all of the craziness and affirm their ideologies, but it does mean, hey, if you're hungry, I'm feeding you.
Yeah. And you used to tell me that, like, I don't know how you said it, but you would always say, like, when there was somebody that separated, and I would ask, like, hey, what's such and such? And then you'd be like, yeah, I don't know. You know, he doesn't come around too much or whatever. And you would say something to the effect of, we may have had our differences, but can we still talk?
Absolutely.
Can we still be friends?
Absolutely.
Can we still love each other? And it was something to that. I might be saying it totally wrong, but it was something to that. And I remember always pondering on that, like, dang, even though he did that, you want to talk to him? Like,
yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, I'm so grateful.
Facts. Yeah.
I'm so grateful that God would save me, man. I mean, like, he had to reach deep to get to me.
Yes.
I mean, I know I should not be here.
Right.
I mean, it's not something I think. I know I shouldn't be here. I don't have anything to brag about.
Yes,
my only boast has to be him. Now, I know that there's a lot of people that believe in different things about God and on and on and on, and some dismiss the Bible. They call it so many crazy names. It's a white man's book. It's a book of stories that have stories, and you know. Yeah. And I mean, anybody that have done any deep theological study, like really, really deep theology, you're not going to get all of these people in the Bible saying the same thing about the same God. And it's just a fraud. Not only that, it's the way they tell their stories, the difference in the way they tell their story. These men didn't know each other. I mean, it's crazy. So without going into that aspect, it is his love, because he is love. Like, When you think of God loving us, God's not relying on you for him to love you.
Right.
He's his own source to love us with. And that frustrates people because to
Right.
them, then why are there poor people and why are there people that are suffering and why does
Right.
kids suffer? They have all, so they're trying to measure God with the stuff we did. Why did this person shoot that person? They're trying to measure the love of God as though that God doesn't have a place for these people. In other words, they leave here, and I used to hear this all the time. Well, God took them. Well, I mean, it depends how you look at it. I believe God received them. There's many stories that you can make it sound like God just reached in and took them, but you read that about Elijah, Enoch, or someone like that. But in reality, this stuff has limitations. This stuff here. Oh man, I don't care what color you are. This stuff has limitations here.
Yes, sir.
And so it lives and it dies.
Right.
And when it's over with, Hebrews 9:27 said it's been appointed unto the man to death, to die. And then after death, then comes judgment. And the idea is that God has never told us we wouldn't die out and leave this stuff here. We got to leave this house. We got
Right.
another address. But his love has provided for all of that, this life and the love to come. And you don't know anybody in your life that has provided for you in this life and in the life to come. And God does that. And that's why I think TTL is really important, because I want to see people healed and I want to see them spread not so much as their love, because that love needs to be governed with a greater love. And that is the love of God. And love is really patient, and it
Yeah.
really is kind. You don't have to. And some of the meanest people I ever met in my life was in the church.
Oh, yeah.
Straight up.
Oh, yeah.
Man, look, listen, speaking tongues, following everything, still mean. I mean,
Yeah.
they don't cuss you out, but they cuss you out with their mind. They just,
Yeah.
they don't like you. They won't say, but they're just their attitude. And there's no honor for people that don't have their hair up a certain way. They got to
Yeah.
have a certain length of dress.
Right.
You don't wear pants. I'm from the Holiness Church, so.
Mm-hmm.
You were restricted, no toe open shoes. You showed
Mm-hmm.
up big toe, you're going to hell. And no, you certainly cannot have short sleeve shirts. No, I'm not a man. So I mean that kind of stuff, and I can appreciate their zeal. But anytime that zeal restricts you from loving people, and only leaves you to love those that you think is like you, we have a problem.
Right.
So TTL centers around tough, tender love. Have enough toughness to where you allow the tenderness of you to overcome circumstances with people and love them.
And is this going to be a service, or is this going to be like class?
It's a class. This coming Sunday at 4:30 is a class. We'll be teaching it, and I have homework for everybody. They take it home, and of course they bring their homework back. We only thought we might have 15 to 20 people. It was 60.
Wow.
And so this Sunday at 4:30, it'll be even more than that probably.
Yeah.
And so the room is it's not a large room, so I don't know the capacity of everything. I know it's got to be pretty intense.
Is it once a week?
It's once every 2 weeks.
Once every 2 weeks. Okay.
Yes, and after the end of the course, I give them this, completion, certificate of completion, and also give them a cap and a T-shirt that says TTL, and then it says SWAT on it.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to build a SWAT team.
Right,
I'm just
right,
saying, I'm trying to
right.
fill some folks that will absolutely trust God, and that's
Yeah.
what SWAT means,
And this is open to the public too,
It's-
not just the members, right?
It's open to the public, but they have to go online and they have to register. It looks like we may have to do it more than just 4 weeks, because it's just growing so crazy.
Yeah.
But we're really excited about that.
That's something big for the community. Good teaching, solid teaching. And yeah, man, that might be something you have to do year round.
Now, the other thing too, so you have children, right, that have
Yeah.
had horrible lives, and church people that have had horrible lives, I
Yeah.
mean, nobody in church is perfect.
Right.
No one is. And
No.
so you have people that really suffer through some things, and they want to come back to God. They don't know how to. They don't know how can I be healed of that, to see things differently. And so it gives us an opportunity to minister to them and to help them deal with that and to watch over their thoughts, because that's a huge thing biblically, is that we watch over what we're thinking. It's not just thinking, it's what we're thinking with, the thoughts you're thinking with. And so in Corinthians it said, listen, you are to take every thought captive, every thought that is contrary and opposes the knowledge of God. You take that thought and you make that your slave. You don't become the slave of that thought. So teaching people to deal with things that have deeply scarred them and have hurt them, and particularly in families, to me is really important because you can be healed. I don't care who you are. You can be healed. Trauma is the only thing that they say can't be healed, but God heals trauma.
Oh, wow.
I have proof of that.
Yeah.
I have proof that God heals trauma.
believe it.
So, but I love you.
Yes, I love you too.
Would you let me come back?
Yes, of course, of course. We got so much to talk about, but we will put all that information in the link in our bio and stuff. So we'll have direct links and stuff like that to go directly to the TTL meeting that you're having.
Yes, sir.
And
Thank you.
the church is in Visalia.
Yes, sir.
Right. And if you don't have a church home, this is a great church. We were all raised there. I was raised there.
Yeah.
And one quick question before you leave: where did restoration come from?
Restoration, it started off with Cathedral of Love, and then the Lord really began to deal with my heart about people being restored. I needed to be restored. And so the reality of that restoration in my own personal life became the reality of what I believe God wanted us to do in Visalia. And of course, as I said earlier, anybody can be healed if they want to be healed. This is not like, taking somebody that's blind, you pray for them and they don't get healed. The physical, because a lot of times people put emphasis on the physical. But this is saying, I don't care how broke your heart is. Isaiah 61, I don't care how broke it is. He specializes in healing broken hearts. So that's where it really came from. God restoring lives.
Yeah, and that's man, as you say that's perfectly describes the church, because you take the time with people, and there's a lot of places that won't, I see strengths and weaknesses and different things, and then other places or whatever, but then one I know a super strength that your church has is taking the time and helping building somebody.
We love it.
And yeah, you see it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Anything we can do, actually.
Yes, sir.
I mean, and the church, I love restoration.
Yeah.
They are amazing, amazing people. I mean, God, it's like walking into a library and seeing all of these different books that's read by men, testimonies of some of just amazing what God has done to restore people's lives in families. I mean, families are being restored,
yes, sir.
Total families. And that's the key to me, just having church and doing, the traditionals. I'm not against that. I don't want to sound like I'm attacking anybody. But to hide in a tradition and to act like you have no scars and no problems and no issues. I'm scared of people that don't do anything wrong.
Oh,
I'm uncomfortable being around folks that do everything right. We all need God to guide us, and we need to trust His guidance. And so that's what I love about restoration. They real. I mean, I got folks that walk in, and they ain't feeling good, you're going to know it.
Yeah,
If they're going through changes, you're going to, but we want to rush to where that pain is, because that's where the blood goes. The blood goes to where the hurt is. That's where the flow of every ministry should go automatically, is where the hurt is, without getting your feelings hurt that they're hurt.
Yeah.
And not giving you what you think you deserve and you need. It doesn't work that way. It's like, if there's a pain, God help me to get there in some capacity. I can't do it all, because God's never called any one person to do it. But as the body of Christ, there's the local body and there's the mystical body of Christ. The local bodies are the different ministries. You mentioned House of Love, Dad Hutchison, you mentioned him, and there's so many. Brother Green, who is these are great men in Tulare. I don't mean they're just men. They have withstood the test of time.
Yes, sir.
And I totally love them. And of course, Elder Green, Pastor Green, and they should have called him Apostle Green, because he has done so much in the community and here.
Yeah.
And so, but it's in light of this kind of expression that you see people actually be healed in mind and thought. I mean, healed. We've got people in our church, honestly, that doctors didn't have hope for. They just thought if you just give them medication and sedate them, that's it. But we watched God heal minds, people with autism, people that had issues with fear and anxiety. God is that good.
Yes.
So,
and this all plays a part.
yes.
From the church to business. To
Yes,
the
sir.
council, all of it plays a part of
Yes.
a healthy life and
Yes,
a
sir.
healthy community.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it, on.
Thank you. You know I love you.
Yes, I love you too, man. And we're gonna pick up and do it again. Thank you for coming. Peace.